Thank you. You are now.
My name's Fran Montague. I'll be talking you through who we've got involved here in just a moment. But just to say that we've been absolutely inundated with interest for this webinar. You can see we've got 62 people on the line already, but there may well be some more joining because we've had an awful lot of people register and send us in questions and start the dialogue beforehand. So that's been absolutely fantastic. In fact, what we'll be doing is looking at some of the points that have been raised already on email to us, and if we can't cover everything today, which is obviously a little bit unlikely in the hour, then we'll be using that to build on this webinar and run something else next year now, so that we can pick up any points of real hot topics for you. So just to introduce who we've got here really today, there's quite a few people involved. Our main presenters are Lee Waller, Inga Wells and Jerry Miles, who'll be introducing themselves properly in a moment. These are people on our Ashridge faculty here involved in research, delivery, a lot of client work, and people who've actually had their previous jobs as well in the real world, in your sector, in the HR and L&D function. So hopefully we've got a good team for you. As I said, my name's Fran Montague, and I'm going to be sort of linking and hosting for you today, but I'm also supported by Joanne Soller and Andy Copeland, who are helping us on the technical and also on picking up some of your questions. So we are recording this. That's the other thing to let you know, so that if you want to share this afterwards or just have another replay, we'll be sending that out to you by email after this. And you may notice that a lot of you have been had your sound settings taken off beforehand. This is just because of the volumes that we've got today. So we didn't want that. Sometimes what happens when people join is you get quite a lot of sound disturbance. So we're certainly not trying to take away your voice. There are lots of opportunities that we've tried to weave into this hour where we can either hear from you in an audio way or take your questions and hear your comments using the chat function. So that's what that is. I'll actually hand over to my colleague Andy now, who's just going to talk through that interactivity bit, if that's okay, Andy, so people know exactly how they can send us questions and comments.
Sure. Thank you, Fran. Okay, so now what's going to happen is I'm just about to share my screen with you. So you'll be able to see me moving around, and this is so that we can just make you a bit more comfortable on the platform and to show you some of the buttons that you may want to use throughout the session today. The first thing is just to confirm that we are recording the session today. We'll be sending out the link afterwards by email. The next thing to look at is some of the buttons on the screen. So you'll see underneath the list of names here, there are three main icons that we're going to use and some smiley faces. If you click on this icon once, you'll see it puts that icon next to your name in the list. So it's the same for all of these buttons at the bottom. You click once there to put it up and again to remove it. So you always use the icon at the bottom of the list of names. So throughout the session today, you may be asked to raise your hand or to put a tick or a cross or even a smiley face next to your name. That's how you do that. And if you do have any problems, you're unsure how to do anything, please write me a message in the chat, which is what I'm going to show you now. Here is where you can send messages to anybody in the session. You can select any individual using this drop-down, or if you'd like to send me a message about anything technical, select my name or host, and then you click in the small box underneath. You type your message into that small box and then press send on the screen, or you can press enter on your keyboard. So you select who you want to send the message to in the drop-down, type in the small box underneath, and then press send. Now we are asking for any input throughout the session that you may have. If you could type that to all participants. Again, it works the same if you select all participants in the send to and then press enter or press send. So we're going to ask for input throughout the session, and if you do have any general feedback or questions, please send that to all participants. Okay, so we're going to start now by running a quick poll, and we're going to be asking, who do we have with us today? So I'm going to open the poll now, and you'll see that appear on the right-hand side. And there are some answers with letters there. If you can select your answer, the answer that fits your profile the best, and then press submit in the bottom right-hand corner, that will submit your answers to us.
Okay. And while people are waiting to do that, so while we're just getting those results back in, and that's really helpful actually for us just to get a sense, I think for all of us collectively as a group, not just the presenters here, but hopefully yourselves as well, to get a sense of who's on the call today. We'll be doing a bit more sense checking in just a moment. So our plan for today, let's dive straight into that. We're just going to do a little snapshot to see if we can get, in a very quick way, hear some of your challenges or perspectives about the landscape, and we'll do that in a moment, very quickly, before we dive straight into the L&D research that we've been doing. And this is our chance, well, this really was why the webinar came about. It's the first airing of this research, and it gives you an opportunity to hear in probably about 10, 12 minutes an absolute overview of the research that we've been undertaking. You are available to obviously access it afterwards, but it's a chance just to hear those high-level points of what was done and what the findings and some of the implications. That's going to help set the scene, I think, for a bit more discussion. We'll move on to talking about some of the specific L&D challenges that we see being faced by some of our clients and participants on programs that we run, and looking about, well, that's really about how we get from the what to the how. And then we've got a little bit of time at the end then when we can talk about influencing and engaging skills and tips. And of course, throughout that, we're really going to try and pick up some of your questions. So I hope that sounds good to you. Andy, do we have the poll results? Just so we can get a sense. That's brilliant. We've got, yeah, a high, as we thought, a very high percentage of L&D professionals who are on the call. Not so much from an HR, organisation development professionals, lower talent management, and of course some others, faculty, and yeah, no C-suite. So that's just a really good guide for us here. So let's start, if we could, just by getting this collective snapshot from you, because I do think it is useful. We have an opportunity. How many participants have we got on the call? Is it about 70 now? Can't see. But we've got an opportunity to hear, you know, I think to get a bit of a sense of some of the challenges that people agree and disagree with. So, Jo, would you mind talking us through that section, please?
So we're going to use some of the tools that Andy has just run us through. So we're going to be using the tick and cross. This is just going to give us a snapshot of where you are currently and how you're feeling. So if I start by reading each statement, we'll do each one in turn. So if we look at the statement number 1, it is a priority for the L&D professional to be a strategic partner to the business. So if you wouldn't mind putting a tick or a cross to whether you agree or disagree with that statement, and we should start to get a sense of where you all are and what you're feeling.
Lots of ticks
yeah,
there.
lots and lots of green.
Okay.
1 or 2 crosses, but most of you are feeling like it is a priority, which is good. Okay, if I can ask Andy just to clear those so we can start afresh for the second statement. So now we're looking at a key challenge for the L&D professional or function is around internal credibility and influence. So again, tick or cross to whether you sort of agree or disagree with that statement. Would be great. Okay.
Nice, we're getting some ticks on the screen as well, which is fun.
Okay, so we've got some stats here. So out of 91 of you, We've got about 50 who are saying they agree, and only just under 10 saying they disagree. We've also got a few people adding to the slide there, so we can kind of get a sense of how you're feeling. Okay, moving on to statement number 3. A key challenge for the L&D professional is getting access to senior thinking. So again, agree or disagree, I know I've had quite a lot of challenges come in from you via email over the last few days, which is great. And I think that is something from that some of you are struggling with a little bit. So, okay. There's about 31 of you saying yes, you agree. A few more this time saying you disagree. So that's interesting, thank you. And then moving on to number 4, this could be slightly different. So you could agree, you could disagree, or you might be somewhere in the middle. I think perhaps if you are somewhere in the middle, let's just leave it blank for now. So the statement is, personally, I am happy with the way L&D is positioned in my organisation. So yeah, lots of crosses there. So let's see how we can kind of help you move that along to get a few more ticks, I guess, in the future.
That's great.
Yeah, so...
Have we got a summary on those?
Yeah, there's about 10 saying yes, you are happy at the minute, 31 saying no, and I guess everyone else who's kind of left it blank is somewhere in the middle.
Okay.
So get part of the way there, maybe a little bit more to do.
That's really helpful. Thanks everybody very much
for
doing that. Without further ado, we'll move on now. Lee and Inga and Jerry are just going to give us a little bit of information about who they are, so you know who we're listening to here today. And then Lee and Inga will then take on and talk about our research. So thanks, Lee. Over to you.
Hello, everybody. My name is Lee Waller. I'm Director of the Centre for Research in Executive Development. And essentially what we do in the centre is we research and we teach around the process of learning. So rather than sort of doing research around content areas, such as marketing or leadership or change, we're particularly focused on the process of learning. So how adults learn, how we can develop methodologies that increase what they learn within the classroom, how we can make sure that what they learn in the classroom they can actually apply when they get back to the organisation. We're also doing research and teaching around how organisations can develop a culture of organisational learning to help continue that learning process and to help the organisation as a whole learn and be more innovative. We've also just been doing some research recently around the neuroscience of learning, particularly of experiential learning. And then, of course, one of the most recent pieces of research we have conducted, myself along with Inga, is a piece of research that we're going to be talking about today around the role and influence of the L&D partner.
Brilliant, thank you. Inga?
Yes, hello everybody. It's great to have you all joining this webinar. I'm working 9 years at Ashridge now, and I have a dual role at Ashridge. So on the one hand, I have a commercial responsibility for the Benelux region, so I take care of clients in the Benelux region. And the other part of my role is that I'm involved in a lot of client work also. So I work with clients like, for example, Friesland Campina, DSM, Lamp Weston, and also a global investor on a number of our programs. I have a background in business administration, and I specialized in marketing strategy. And before I worked with Ashridge, I've been a managing director of TIA's Business School in the Netherlands, and I also was an assistant professor at Tilburg University teaching marketing strategy. As said before, I now work, as a client manager and director in the Benelux region, and I often talk to clients, L&D clients, HR clients, to the challenges that they face in their organization, and that is also where the idea of this research originated. And together with Lee, I embarked on this journey, as it were, to finalize the research and to do the research. I am passionate about making L&D work for both organizations and individuals. And I think that is it from my side for now.
And hi, my name is Jerry Miles. I'm the Program Director for Ashridge's Strategic HR Management Program, which runs a couple of times a year. We try to do 3 things. One is to challenge the role of HR and ensure that everything that we do is aligned to what the business or the organization needs. Secondly, to inject some ideas or points of view to, quite frankly, to make us look better with senior people. And then thirdly, how to increase our personal power to make things happen, particularly in terms of those relationships. My background over the last 40 years started with an HR career with BP. Before I worked as a consultant with PwC and Capgemini. During that time, I also held a number of internal roles, running L&D programs and latterly as the talent director for Capgemini Consulting. I've worked across most industry sectors, but I have to say that most of my experience is with large rather than small organisations.
So, sorry, I've skipped a slide here. Lee, could I hand over to you to talk about our research, please?
Absolutely. We started this research a couple of years ago now, 2 or 3 years ago now, with an understanding that as our working environment is becoming increasingly more complex and increasingly more competitive, people, our human resource, are becoming more and more critical and a really vital asset. A real differentiator in organisations. So it kind of followed on from that the role of L&D has really significant and strategic importance. But what we were also understanding was that there was a lot of challenges that L&D were facing in becoming a strategic partner. And one of the critical ones of those is they're still really maturing as a department. And as a function compared to other sort of operational functions, they're really still quite young, so they're still establishing themselves and establishing their credibility. One of the other critical factors and challenges that emerged was their ability to align what it is that they do with the organisational strategy. I mean, organisational strategies are very fast-moving. They flux a lot. They're changing in response to their changing environments, and it's very difficult for L&D strategies to keep up with that and to be as fluid. Some L&D initiatives can be months, if not years, in the making. So there's a real challenge there in trying to keep up with the organisational strategy and to balance long and short-term priorities. Another one of the critical problems was their ability, L&D's ability to demonstrate that what they are doing is having an impact on these really critical business outcomes, and not just in terms of individual competence development, but also really impacting at the business. And there seems to be some issues there around being able to do that. But also what is really critically important is that L&D don't always have a real influence over whether their initiatives do have an impact on critical business outcomes. Two critical stakeholders here are senior managers and line managers, and they have a real influence over whether initiatives actually can impact critical business outcomes. And by supporting learning, by supporting transfer of learning, by becoming engaged and demonstrating the value of learning initiatives. So one of the critical things for L&D, it would seem, is that they really need to be able to influence those stakeholders if what they do is going to be able to impact back in the organisation. So credibility becomes a really kind of key important factor here. And one of the things, there's a chap called Hamlin who did some really interesting research, and he talks about this kind of vicious cycle that if L&D haven't got the credibility with senior managers, particularly this critical stakeholder group, then they're not going to be able to be consulted around organisational strategy and what it is the business needs. If they're not being consulted, then what they do is not going to align with the organisation and what these business needs are. If it's not able to align, then it's not going to impact on these critical business outcomes, and therefore that's going to further impact their credibility. So there really is kind of a vicious cycle there. So what we wanted to understand was how some organisations manage to overcome these, so how some examples of best practice in L&D can overcome some of these challenges. So we did interviews with 3 organisations, B&Q in the UK, Siemens in Germany, and AXA Australia. And we interviewed I think it was about 12 different individuals in total, and we interviewed not only the heads of L&D in those organisations, but other senior managers in the organisation as well to get their perspectives. And then we also interviewed other people from within the L&D function. And what we were exploring with them was things around their approach to the L&D strategy, the nature of the programs and the initiatives that they developed, the organisation's attitude generally towards L&D, and then the L&D function itself, so in terms of the roles, their experience and their skills.
Great, absolutely brilliant. Thank you very much. So, Inga, I think you're going to talk us through now some summary of the findings and the implications.
Yes, happy to do that. So, in the end, we had an in-depth view on what highly influential L&D professionals actually do in their organizations, and also how they did it. They shared a lot of examples with us, real-life examples on their journey. And also we were able to have a closer look at the organizational context that was surrounding them. And by analyzing all the data and all the interview material, we were able to identify areas that played a crucial role in their success. And I think we came up, that led us, to come up with 3 key areas that are really of key importance to people, to these L&D professionals in their success. And it is not the separate areas, but it's mainly the combination of all 3 areas. And you're now looking on your screen, you're looking at the themes that emerged from our research. So we see 3 areas that came as key themes from the data in the interviews. The one area, first of all, it is the trusted advisor bubble, or the area. So it is about, we're now switching slides. I'm looking for this one, yes, actually, being the grid, the trusted advisor. So people, the L&D professionals that we talked to and we interviewed, and also the people surrounding them, came up with a lot of examples and developments in their organizations that made us realize how important it is for an L&D professional to be seen as the trusted advisor in the organization. But also one, not only the trusted advisor, but one who is able to be the grid that forms the pearl. And that is not my quote. I wish I had invented it, but it's not. It's one of our interviewees. But I think it says that it's important that you can be the one who, on the one hand, challenges, irritates the system a bit, but for a good cause, to make it aware of certain patterns of stuckness, etc. If you think about how you become the trusted advisor, I think it's so important and it's crucial to have good relationships with the key stakeholders. I think that is key to this point. And that means if you want to build key relationships, the things that stood out in our interviews was that these people actually spend a lot of time going out and meet the people and have conversations in the organization. They explore, they inquire about the business and what is happening in the system. And they often also challenge and offer feedback. There are a number of areas that are surrounding this trusted advisor area, like, for example, credibility and trust. And my colleague Lee already mentioned it. It's so important to be aware of the credibility and trust you have with the different key stakeholders in your organization, and also understand how you can build your credibility and trust. Another important area that we came across was business partnering and consulting skills. If you want to be the trusted advisor, you have to have some skills that allow you to have really good conversations with the people you are consulting with. And that means that you have to become really self-aware, understand how you come across, how you are wired, and the personal impact you have. Another important area, and I think we all understand that, is that we need to understand the business. If we want to add value to the system and to the business performance, we need to understand how it works, what the key challenges are, and how then we, as the L&D professionals, could add value to that. So key in this area are the relationships, the consulting skills, and really understand what you're talking about business-wise. Another area is the L&D expert bubble. So that is the second area. And I think it is, in the end, the L&D people are the specialists in the organization that deal with learning and development of individuals and of talents. It is, in fact, the knowledge and the experience that you have in your backpack. And you don't necessarily talk about it in these terms because you don't sell a program, but you try to sell a solution and work with the organization to, to address a certain need. L&D expertise, again, we have mentioned a number of examples. What is important in the L&D expertise area? First of all, of course, you have to understand how adults learn. How adults learn through action, through reflection, through doing experiments. And then going to the other area, understanding how behaviors change and how you can support people in creating real change in their behavior. And that is understanding how you can transfer knowledge that they get to really trying to do something different in their workplace. And you can do that, of course, through design, through engaging line managers, through building in support systems. There are different ways. Another important thing is also the area of understanding how organizations change. And that is then that you try to think through your L&D expertise, through understanding how the business works and what the key challenges are, what it takes to change the system. So stepping from individual change to organizational change. And also here we have identified a number of areas that came up in our research. How you could work with this three-bubble or three-area key themes coming out from this research is that you can look at it and think these are all interlinked and there are different links with the different areas and in between the different areas. But how you could work with it is look at the three areas and think, where am I? Where do I focus? Where do I spend most of my time? What does that say to me? Where is my organization? So you can use it as kind of assessment and understanding where am I vis-a-vis these themes that came out from looking at best practice research. And I think I want to leave it at this for now.
And thank you very much for that, Inge. And Jerry or Lee, just to see whether you had anything to add or comment on any of these findings.
No, I think Inge. I think Inge has captured them more beautifully. And as she said, what is really valuable here is understanding and focusing on where it is that you are and what it is that you tend to spend most of your time on, and thinking about some of the other areas that maybe you need to be developing in and moving into a little bit to sort of give you a more holistic approach to L&D.
Okay, that's brilliant. Jerry, anything from you on this before I move on?
No, the only quick thing I would say is I'm really pleased to see that we've not junked the content box, i.e. it's very, very important to remain an expert. But I'm also really pleased that the language of OD is being used a lot more rather than just L&D. I think in the name itself, it doesn't help us.
Yes, good point. Absolutely good point. Just to remind people, they're welcome to send in any questions. We're actually getting quite a lot of chat activity, but it's about the sound quality. We will be doing a recording. Andy, did you want to say anything on the sound or any advice to people if they are having problems?
Yeah, we do seem to be having an issue with only those connected via computer audio. If you can and you do have a phone available, it is possible to switch your audio over to the phone by clicking on the audio button underneath the list of names. And if you click the use phone button, it will bring up some dial-in details, and that is a far more reliable way of getting audio, although I am working on fixing the computer audio issue.
Okay, thanks for that. I'm sorry for those who are struggling to hear. We have recorded it, so you will be sent this. And hopefully, if you are able to dial back in on the phone line, you'll be able to join and carry on with the debate with us. So I just thought it'd be good to hear whether any of this is resonating with you. So we just have this opportunity now just for those who've been able to digest our three domains to emerge out of the research. Could you give us your yes or your no to the question of whether this is resonating with you? Just in the same way we did before by just ticking. It'd be really, really useful to hear. To see. We've got some ticks, which is encouraging. We know this is only a start point. We're going to be talking now about the sort of, well, you know, drilling down a little bit more for you into some of these areas and also some of the specific challenges. But it's just really helpful to us to get a sense that we're in the right sort of area and this is connecting with people. Do we have any stats on that, actually, on how many yeses and nos?
There's 56 yeses and 0 nos.
Okay, brilliant. I mean, I actually wonder whether the high volume of attendees is in some way a reflection of this as well, because, of course, an L&D professional doesn't have a massive amount of opportunity for development and exploring these issues in the same way that you could organise things for other people. But it's quite rare, isn't it, to have this opportunity, don't you think, Lee, to actually debate?
Absolutely. I mean, that's one of the things that we found just having conversations with our clients who are, you know, your L&D professionals, is that quite often they are the last people on the list that they even think about sort of getting any kind of development or focusing on. So, yeah.
We run a lot of these webinars, and we always find those that are specifically targeted to the L&D manager, director is most appealing for obvious reasons. So, Jerry, I'm going to ask whether you might be able to help us explore now some of the L&D challenges and realities, and this piece about how do we get from the what to the how. Can you pick up on that, Jerry?
I can indeed, yes. And can I just say to everyone who's dialed in, please interrupt me whenever you like, either by sending the questions through, hopefully someone will pick them up, and or just saying something if that's allowed. I don't want to miss anything. So I've picked three. Three of the big ones I think are based on practical experience. The first one is access to senior thinking, which can lead to Chinese whispers. I'm then going to talk about the elephant in the room, and then thirdly, talk about a little bit on agility and the pace of change of what actually is required. So the first one, access to senior thinking. I don't know about the people on this call, but one of the biggest frustrations that I find working with L&D people is when they can't hear firsthand from the most senior people as to what is required. And what I found is that this leads to endless toing and froing, checking out needs, checking, rechecking, checking again, for fear of getting it wrong, getting the user requirements wrong, because we know that that could be big expenditures in terms of detailed design and delivery. And for me, all this adds up to the big enemy, which is delayed delivery, because it just takes up too much time. Can I just check? Does that echo with other people? Have you found that? Find yourself sort of almost then listening to the Chinese whispers, things get lost in translation, get a bit bent.
We've got an immediate yes, absolutely. Okay, we may get some other comments as people digest.
So one of
thank you by the way to those who've also suggested some social media platforms and different opportunities where L&D to connect. There's some nice activity going on the chat there. We've had a no. I definitely have access to senior thinking, and another yes. So, you know, we're going to get a mix there.
Okay. And just before I get on my soapbox, does anyone have any ideas or things that have actually worked for them, where they've struggled to get access, but they've managed to get over this challenge?
So should we leave that question hanging and then people can answer?
Sure.
We have had Gordon who is saying it's more about when we get access, i.e. it's too late in the strategic plans. And a comment here, step up a governance model which will give you access. And consistency of senior thinking in the C-suite can be interesting. Any comments on that, Jerry? Any thoughts?
The last one makes me smile, because yes, who do you listen to? It's a horrible thing to say, but if in doubt, I listen to the chief executive. And where I've got a discrepancy in the executive committee on the top team, I think it just has to be ground out, just to make sure that you're not listening to a lone voice. And whilst I know we can't please everybody all of the time, I think if there is a problem in the top team, it has to be ironed out before you invest too much more effort.
Shall I read out some more of these comments? Sometimes even when you get access to senior leaders, the messages are different, and creating a balance is the skill. Informal, often as important as formal structures. Darren agrees. An interesting thing for me is how we work better with the SMEs in the business. Being the L&D expertise, we can sometimes be undermined if we are unable to tap into the business expertise to make the learning relevant to those using it. Credibility is vital. Loads of debate here, Jerry.
Good. I mean, I think this. Well, I'm pleased because I think that this is a problem. Personally, something I have tried in the past and failed at is to bypass layers, and particularly with my next point, HR, and to try to go direct, and that's not had the desired result, I have to say. I'm personally not an advocate of pulling L&D out, even under an OD umbrella, which I kind of think of as organisation and capability development rather than just OD. It wouldn't worry me if L&D as a title disappeared and was replaced by something like OCD, but unfortunately those initials have other connotations.
What do you mean them to be?
Sorry, organisation and capability development. So it's precisely those things we were talking about, knowing how to shift the organisation and knowing where to target that development of capability. I think, personally, I would still rather everything went through HR, but that's a personal view. That's in terms of simplicity of organisation structures. And not having the competition, which I want to go on to. I think the one big way I've seen it really work is to not go the formal route. Someone mentioned the informal route, but go the project route. So a really, really big transformation agenda or a big problem that requires a project role, which allows you to not upset the normal order of things through formal reporting relationships. Shall I move on to the second one?
I can read out some more of these comments, Jerry.
Sure.
We've got demoing credibility through adding real value helps getting access in the future.
Yes.
Many L&D professionals have never read the strategic or business plans for the units they support, so we may well be part of the problem. And finding the comms channel and media to get the PR out in front of influencers. So I guess that's the internal comms channel. Is that right? Perhaps somebody could clarify. Basing your relationships with senior leaders on an understanding of their areas helps in building credibility and eases access. Steering working groups composed of both senior leaders and previous people in the organisation who have shown real impactfulness due to L&D activities. Yeah, this can help influence and creating a following. Thank you, Nolene. I like L&D. It does what it says in terms of the name. I like L&D. Julie. It does what it says on the tin. We are supporting learning and championing overall development. I also like the notion of OD, developing an organisation, of course. Really effective consultancies, Gordon's saying. You should always do your homework before talking to senior leaders. Be aware of what their priorities are. Nice point, Caroline. And really effective consultancy skills are vital. Thank you so much. Absolutely brilliant input there from everybody, don't you think, Jerry?
I agree, and again, I think the problem is there aren't enough hours in the day at times. We all know that we should know the business plan inside out. We all know that we should understand individual directors or top team members areas. We all know that we should understand, what all the product suite are, what is it's being sold, to whom. We all know that, and we all know that it's the key to adding real value. But sometimes it's just hard. It is hard, and it's about time. I think the bottom line for me is that if we can't trace a direct line between every single thing that we do to the business in some way that it improves results, however we measure them, then I think we have a problem. So whether it's about cost down, revenue up, or reputation up, whatever it is, we must be able to tie everything back. And if we can't, we probably shouldn't be doing it.
Yeah. Okay. Let's move on to challenge 2. Not that I want to cut off this debate, but just in the interest of time.
Okay, so challenge 2 is one I've already alluded to, and this is, I call it the elephant in the room, because it's the one that we probably don't like to talk about too much, which is internal competition with our HR colleagues. And this is a bit sad, as if everything we've said already isn't hard enough in practical terms. What I've found is that HR can be the acknowledged competitor internally, which is very sad. I think the major problem is that the HR director in particular wants to own the relationship with the chief executive and the executive committee and wants to be the trusted advisor. I think that's tough, or maybe it's just me, and you just have to get permission to go direct. The big learning for me here is that you have no choice but to invest heavily in the relationship with your HR colleagues. Absolutely no choice, because if you don't, they'll come back and bite you. I have personal experience of that. And I think I know it can be done. I think we can move ourselves into a position of trust, not just within HR, but then as a result of that, with the people that we're trying to influence who are actually running the organization. Is it me, or is this a problem for other people?
There's a bit of chat, actually. Victoria, just before we went on to this challenge, Victoria Payne was ahead of us, I think, in her comment. We have to work through our HRBPs, HR business partners, as how we are set up. Only one point of contact for the business to HR, so everything we get is second-hand, which causes its own problem. And then David Mays was saying, yes, he thinks Victoria's point is key, and asks who's got this right. So if anyone wants to share, if they've got this right. Francis Light says, building strong relationships with the HRBPs, they will then support you and endorse you going out to their business areas. And Roy Pollock is, see Rita Smith's book, Strategic Learning Alignment, or David Vance's The Business of Learning, for 2 examples of corporations that have done alignment well. Thank you for that. I'll send those books round, actually. We'll send that in the follow-up. Not so relevant to me, from Di Blackburn. Gordon, can be a problem, but in my previous organisation, L&D was part of HR. That helped reduce these issues.
Yep.
Jerry, do you want to add anything more on that, or shall we go into challenge 2 and then we can pick up questions, at the end? Challenge 3, I beg your pardon.
Yes, sure. Okay, so challenge 3, I think this is probably the toughest of the lot. So let's assume that we managed to get our access to senior people, and we've managed to go in on a true partnership model with our HR people or HR business partner people. The third one for me is around, I don't particularly like the word agility, but it's around somehow being very adaptable ourselves, not just helping the organisation to be adaptable. The problem I've experienced here is because of the effort it takes to create things, there's a psychological investment that we all have in the program that we have created, or the programs we have created. And that makes it, on a personal level, very hard to tear them down and start again, even though in our heart of hearts sometimes it's needed. And I don't think this investment is just us or our L&D teams or HR teams. it's also the managers that have been cultivated and involved as well in design and or delivery. And what I found is that, because I have tried to curtail or chop programs, and people's personal reputations are often bound up in them, and it's quite hard to let these things go. Anybody else found that?
I was going to ask, actually, do we have any examples of anything around risk from the research, or anything around agility and change from the research? Lee and Inge?
Well, talking about agility and the speed of changing needs and be able to adapt to that, I did touch upon a very interesting way of interacting with the business with one of my interviewees from AXA, in fact. And he said that sometimes in his interactions with senior managers or with line managers or people in the line, he came across a situation where people were really stuck or teams got stuck, and in a way they ended up, in his example, they started blaming almost the system and the organization of their stuckness. What he then did, so in going out and building these relationships, he did come across certain challenges in specific teams or in specific departments, and then he responded by trying to help them find a solution. And he used a phrase called, "I'm sending in the SWAT team, the SWA team," and what he meant by that was he was. Then he and his colleagues were then working alongside this intact team or this department to work out their problems and become aware of their patterns and of, for example, how they became stuck in a specific situation and help them make sense of the situation. And therefore, because he facilitated this process, he gained in credibility. And he shared, the story of his successes, and the people who were with him in that session also shared the story of the success. And I think by his ability to reach out to people and to interact and to build relationships and hearing their challenges, that allowed him to respond on the spot to their specific needs. And these needs change. And he was able to respond with his team on quite short notice. And I thought that was a really nice example of how an L&D department can really work alongside different parts of the organizations to help them improve their performance.
Thank you, Inge. Jerry, would you be able to share your example from GE? I think we talked about that when we were doing some prep for the webinar.
Yeah,
it's really about practical things around agility.
Yes, it is, and
yeah.
I think the bottom line for me is that we don't have any option but to do less. You have to have headroom to be agile or adaptable. We have to take some punts here and put our big bets on a smaller number of things. So GE, General Electric, was an interesting one. It was only the week before last. Listening to them talk about fail fast. So have a go at something with a very, very short period of time to try it, often on a half-baked idea of what's actually required, and then be prepared to fail if necessary and junk it. But if it has something going for it, to then work on improving it and use that as almost like a rapid prototyping type approach, which doesn't always come easy to people who have been trained long term in L&D, but really reach what they call a pivot point as fast as possible. So do we stop? Do we turn left, or do we turn right in terms of changing direction? The other thing I know I found to be very, very helpful is to not just think in terms of programs, but to think modularly. So most programs can be broken down into modules, which can be resorted. So rather than assume something is completely dead and we have to start again, there's lots that can be carved up and used and repackaged. Again, everything is about speed.
Absolutely. Why don't we Why don't we just have a look at some of the comments that have come in? Or there was one question, I think there, wasn't there, Joe? If you could just summarise some of the questions and comments for us, that would be great at this point.
Yeah, I think on that last point, Gary, I think Gordon is sort of saying, isn't that going to impact on the credibility if we kind of start things and then we change our minds and we scrap them and move on to something new? Have you got anything you could add on how that affects credibility?
I think it's back to public relations or back to the communications message, which is it's not about saying we've put everything in this and we've listened and this is what we're going to do. I think it's to say we know the direction in which we need to go. In the interest of speed, we're going to try something, but to make sure that people understand that it's not the answer or the solution from the very beginning. I'm absolutely with Gordon. Credibility is absolutely key.
Mm. And then we've had something else coming from Emma, who said, our sense is that of all the specialist areas, learning is one that HR generalists are probably the least comfortable with. This means that learning is often brought in late or a missed opportunity. But over the last 12 months, we have been doing work to test and raise awareness as well as build sort of the relationships. So I don't know if that sort of all ties in together about trying and in the end, it's a long-term process about building credibility. Yeah. Would you agree?
I think it also says something about HR career paths. I think it's wrong to just develop people up the L&D route or up the HR route. I think people should go from one to the other and back again. Otherwise, you don't really understand the other point of view.
Inge, did you have a thought on that?
Yes, I was thinking on the comment that Joe just shared, that it is a nice example of the proactiveness of L&D and what the result is of being very proactive and going out. I think that was a nice example of people going out and tell about what they actually do, because that is important. And also it's a journey. It's not there's no one-off solution to get the credibility and get to be the trusted advisor. It is definitely, and I also heard that in all of the interviews really, that it is a tough journey. It's little steps, experimenting, gaining credibility, going back, receiving feedback, do something else. So it is a journey, and it takes effort and energy.
Great, that's really good.
There was one nice comment from Roy Pollock, and someone else has sort of dittoed this. With respect to the pace of change, L&D needs to manage its learning portfolio similar to the way the company manages its product portfolio, periodically reassigning priorities and conditions as conditions change. Nice way of thinking about it.
I think it's great. I agree wholeheartedly.
Yeah, I also just wanted to say, so this is Lee, that for me, at the heart of all of this is staying and remaining really, really close to the business, because then if what you are doing, even if you're changing plans halfway through, you're having to stop, you're having to start something new, if you are communicating and able to demonstrate that, yes, things have changed, but look, this is completely tied to the challenges that we are facing right here and now, then that can only be perceived as a credible and a worthwhile and a valuable thing to do for the organisation. I think one of the people that we spoke to was talking about how you can, in responding to the challenges and to trying to stay agile, what you can do is change. I think you sort of alluded to this a little bit, Jerry, about talking about modules. You can, rather than changing the structure of an inbuilt program, something that's been designed sort of into the future, you change the content. So you're still running the same program, you're still delivering it to the same people, but the content is what's more fluid, so that what you are actually teaching them within that sort of formal structure is changing and reflecting what's going on in the business right there and then.
Okay, great. There's some lovely comments here. What we'll probably do is it's getting near to 12, and there's a little bit more content we want to offer you. But we can pick up some of more of these comments to you after the hour, because some people will have to go, promptly at 12. But we can continue a little bit longer. So I just want to move us on, if I may, to the specific topic of skills around influencing and engaging, because it was one of the very specific elements to come out of the research. And we wanted to share with you some of the practical things that came up, but also some practical tips or advice for increasing the ability to engage or influence. We had an indication this would be of value to people. So Lee, would you give us the ones that particularly resonated with you around influencing and engaging?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, a lot of this has sort of already come up in our discussion so far over this past hour. But in terms of influencing critical stakeholders, one of the things that came out was it's really important to influence those that you can access. So like your HR business partners, like the line managers that you're dealing with and you're managing and you're working with day to day, and the senior managers that you do actually have an access to, and building relationships with them outside of your formal influence and outside of your sort of the authority of your role. And what's really critical is if you can develop them as advocates to learning, then they will help to make sure that the learning is being supported back in the organisation. They will help to demonstrate the value of the learning as well. And all of this is going to have an influence on the impact of your initiatives. One way that's really valuable in getting access and engagement with senior managers is getting them involved, so collaborating with them, getting them involved in designing programs, getting them involved if you can in delivering programs, so either launching a big initiative or being the people who are being fed back to from projects that might be outputs from the program. So again, this kind of gets them bought in and gets them engaged and gets them supporting the learning, and again, it demonstrates that to the participants that the senior management consider this to be really valuable, and that's a very motivating factor. And I think, as we said before, it's also really critical to make sure that the L&D have a real commercial understanding and that they can talk that commercial language so that they can engage in those critical conversations and be consulted and be involved, which helps, again, get them close to the business. And we talked as well a little bit about impact and demonstrating impact. And finding ways of demonstrating impact, even if it's in small steps, small initiatives, demonstrating the impact of that, and then building on the credibility that generates. So I think those are kind of the main sort of critical ones that came out of the research for us. I'm sorry, I'm aware of time. So.
Great, thanks. Inga, could you give us your thoughts?
Yes, to build on that and to add to the picture, what we've also heard our interviewees saying and mentioning across the board really is that how important it is to have the skills to really engage with people and to have real good quality conversations. And we always say, you know, it's important to build relational skills so that you can relate to people and engage and have good conversations. That means that, you know, you should be able to listen really well, because by listening really well, you pick up a lot of the things that you normally don't hear. And also, when you listen well, you should be able to have different ways of having a good conversation and have different styles to really explore and inquire into situations and people, and have the intervention styles that you need to be able to have a good quality conversation. I think that is crucial, because you can reach out to people, but if you then can't have a good conversation that really helps you understand what's going on and helps you challenge the status quo, then you know, it's still lost. You have a nice conversation, but not a good one.
Thank you, Inga. Jerry, your final thought on that?
My final thought on that would be around trust and credibility, I think. And just some thoughts going through my mind about how hard it can be at times, but it's essential to leave your own ego at the door. So I don't believe in influencing and engaging with people just for my own personal benefit or my own personal agenda. I think unless people see that you're on their side and it's a win-win and you're sort of batting for the organisation, if you like, I don't think you get that trust and credibility.
Yeah, thank you, Jerry. Let's hear, or just invite people, if they still want to send us any questions, we can pick those up. I know we are getting close to the end now. Jo, were there any thoughts or comments you wanted to share from participants?
There was a few questions around sort of how to get out into the business, and I think we've just discussed that really. It is about building relationships and sort of starting where you can. Lots of people agreeing with that. Yes, it's so important for L&D professionals to get out into the business, really understand the priorities firsthand to build that credibility. And then I've had James say to remember the 70-20-10 principle. The largest part of the role is to support developmental experiences in the workplace and to prepare people to make the most of those opportunities through the programs. So I think a lot of questions that had come into me previously before the webinar were about how to gain management buy-in, and then there was a challenge right at the beginning about how to gain management buy-in to ensure that that's cascaded down through the organisation to make sure that people are involved in their development and interested and understand why they need to be there for their better, I guess. I don't know if there's anything to add on that.
Any thoughts from that, Jerry or Inga or Lee, on that particular point?
I think for me, I think getting senior management buy-in is really critical because, well, there's, lots of reasons. One, senior managers have such an influence on the impact of L&D initiatives through their ability to develop like a culture of learning, to support learning and to support learning transfer, in their influence over the sort of the general culture and whether an organisation is going to be open to doing things differently or resistant to incorporating new ways of doing things. And I think also just if you can get senior management buy-in and engagement and make that public and communicated, then it is a really huge, I think as I said earlier, motivating factor for participants, so that when they walk in the door of the classroom, if that's what we're talking about, then they are engaged, they are motivated, they see the value of their learning, they can really see the benefits for them, and that just means that they're actually going to learn so much more when they're actually in the classroom, which then means that they're going to be able to transfer it when they come back out, so which again is supported by senior management. So for me, senior management engagement in L&D activities is critical.
We had a nice debate about the 70-20 will rapidly become the Ulrich model of L&D, I suspect, a means to structure and quantify activity without due respect to the context of the organisation and what is actually required. We're going to move on to just some final thoughts from us now, because I'm aware that obviously people will be dialing off, and we want to in some way wrap up the session. And thank you for joining us. Can we just, could you all just offer us, Jerry, Inga and Lee, some final point that people might take away with them today, if there was one thing you had to leave them with?
Very, very briefly, it's delivery for me. Talking is great, but delivery is what gets you the credibility.
Yeah.
I definitely agree, Jerry, and I would add to that how important it is to make sure that it's the right climate before you start designing anything. So don't ignore the impact of the organization and climate on your success, and be aware of the role that you yourself have in trying to establish that certain organization climate.
Yeah, I would entirely agree with both of those points. And for me, what is really at the heart of this is impacting critical business outcomes. At the end of the day, that is the sort of the overall objective of the L&D function, is to have an impact on what really matters to the business. And for me, it takes you back to sort of Hamlin's vicious cycle or virtuous cycle if we can get it right. So if we can develop the credibility, then we will be involved in those conversations. We will be consulted. We'll be able to align what we do with the organisation or strategy, which means we can impact business outcomes, which again it supports our credibility. So it's about sort of shifting that cycle from a vicious cycle into a virtuous cycle for me.
Okay, great. Thank you. Thank you very much, everybody who's been with us. We've still got a number of people with us here now, and just wanted to say we all really enjoyed the opportunity to share our research with you and start this conversation about some of the implications and the real challenges you face. So I just hope this has been really useful for you. And there's our contact details there if you wanted to contact us. And we will be sending you, Joe will be sending you a follow-up email with some of the slides that we've been presenting today, and obviously the recording, and you're welcome to follow up with us on any questions and continue this debate. So for those who have to go, thank you very much. For those who can stay on, I know there's been a little bit of interest around, well, there was some interest around the idea of the fail fast concept, Jerry, that you were talking about from Gordon. Let me just have a look if I can find that question. How do you recommend communicating to the business the idea of being willing to try quickly and fail fast to help maintain credibility so we aren't perceived as not adding value? Do you want to just share some more thoughts on this idea, Jerry? Because there's a few comments on fail fast and this idea of dealing with the speed of change.
Yeah, I mean, bearing in mind that this is something I've heard about from Julie rather than experienced. But what it sounds like to me is rapid prototyping, which I have used, which for me has to be put in a box so that it's sort of protected and you protect the rest of the business from this idea. So if we translate that into L&D speak, you know that there's a bit of a problem. You've done your homework and you've checked it out with some people on the top team. They're terribly impressed, particularly if you're being proactive about it, or they've come to you with a particular problem, and a small group of people then work on it only based on the knowledge which you've actually got, and try to build something which is imperfect, and then you go and test whether you've got it right and you change it, but in great speed. But as far as the rest of the organisation is concerned, they may not be aware of it at this point in time. So that's what I mean about keeping it inside a box. If the rest of the organisation is aware of it, then they need to understand that it is work in progress. So for me, if in doubt, don't tell the organisation. Resist the temptation to trumpet something before it's actually been achieved.
Okay, thanks. There's some people asking about Hamlin. Where can we read more?
Okay, there's a little bit more detail in the report, and there is also a reference. So what we can do is in the follow-up, I'll make sure that I include that reference for you. But I think somebody was asking just to kind of recapture the steps, and sort of at the heart of that Hamlin cycle is credibility. So as I said, without credibility, you're not going to be consulted around organisational strategy. Without getting that consultation, you don't know what it is that the business needs, so you can't align what you do with the organisational strategy and with those business needs, which means that what you do, your initiatives, are not going to have an impact on the business, which is further going to negatively impact your credibility. So so just a quick recap there, but yeah, we'll include the reference in the follow-up for you.
That's great. And just on buy-in, getting buy-in, Roy's making the point here, I don't know if Roy's still with us, but it may be the wrong approach. We should not be offering training that doesn't start with a request, brackets buy-in from management. We should not have to sell our programs to them. So we should not even be offering training that doesn't start with a request for buy-in from management. So yeah, just a nice point.
Yep.
Yeah. Nice point. What else have we got? I'm just wondering if there's a lot of chat here. I think we've covered most of the points. Jo, was there any other questions I've missed there?
No, I think we've covered everything. There was just someone adding a bit about, what did they say? If we aren't getting buy-in, how do we create opportunities to make a difference? But I think that's been covered, and I think it is about relationships. If you're in that relationship, you're kind of going to know what they're going to be asking from you. So I think that's covered. Everything else, I think, yeah, looks like we haven't missed anything. If we have, obviously the contact details are there. Please do get in touch, and when I send out the follow-up emails, I'll be offering a chance for you to get back in touch with us as well.
That's fantastic. It would be great to get your thoughts on our webinar. We do have a short poll we could run at the end, but about 50% have had to log off on the hour. So we'll probably send that out in the follow-up as well. That's right, isn't it, Jo? So that'll be really helpful if you can give us your thoughts, because we would like to build on this webinar and do a further piece around this topic, picking up on some of the areas that were hot topics for you. So thank you very much for that. And we'll be in touch. I hope it's been really useful for you. I want to just thank Lee, Inga and Jerry so much for all their work in preparing for today and for sharing their insights with us, and to Joe and Andy as well for pulling this whole webinar together. So thank you, everybody. It's been great having you on the call, and we look forward to the next one. We'll be in touch. Bye-bye.